Welcome, everyone. Ready to deep dive into the life of a scientist who, well, he might not be a household name, but get this, his work, it's all around us. We're talking Ernest Rutherford.
A giant, truly, in the world of physics, often called, the father of nuclear physics.
And that's what we're going to unpack today, right? How this one guy, Ernest Rutherford, ended up changing the way we see, well, everything. Because it all boils down to atoms, doesn't it?
Those tiny building blocks, yeah. The stuff that makes up, well, you, me, the planet, everything. And Rutherford. He pretty much cracked the atom wide open, revealed its secrets.
So before we get to those big discoveries, let's rewind. Who was this guy? Where did it all begin for Ernest Rutherford?
Picture this. Rural New Zealand, 1871, big family, 12 kids, and Ernest, he's number 4.
12 kids. Wow, I bet it was never quiet.
Probably not, no. But even in a crowd like that, his talent, it's shown through. Academics, he aced them, won scholarships, ended up at Canterbury College in New Zealand, and then Cambridge University in England.
Across the world, huh? Small town beginnings to the big leagues of science. What happens at Cambridge?
So, hot topic back then was radio waves, and Rutherford, he jumps right in. He actually held a world record for a bit, for detecting them over a distance.
A world record. Our atom-splitting scientist was a record breaker, too. That's amazing. Okay, but radio waves, that wasn't his main thing, was it?
Nope. It was something new, mysterious at the time. Radioactivity. This is just after X-rays are discovered. Scientists are starting to peek into, well, the invisible world of radiation.
Must have been an exciting time for science. And maybe a little dangerous. So how does Rutherford get involved in this new world of the unseen?
McGill University, Canada. He teams up with this chemist, Frederick Soddy, and together they start digging into these radioactive elements, things like thorium, radium, the whole lot.
So they're playing with radioactive stuff, but what were they actually trying to, figure out?
They were kind of watching atoms fall apart right there in front of them.
Atoms falling apart. That's got to be mind-blowing back then. Sounds pretty sci-fi even now.
It was huge. Everyone thought atoms were these tiny solid things, like the most basic, unchangeable pieces of everything. But Rutherford and Soddy, their work showed that certain atoms, well, they weren't so stable after all. They could break down, change into different elements, and give off radiation while they were at it.
So they're watching these invisible atoms decay and realizing, wait, the basic building blocks? Maybe not so basic after all. But if they couldn't actually see the atoms, what were they using to, observe this stuff?
Right. They couldn't see individual atoms, but they could see what happened when they broke down. Rutherford, very meticulous, He's carefully watching what kind of radiation comes out from these elements. And get this, he's the one who came up with the terms alpha ray, beta ray, to describe, 2 different types he saw. Later on, he finds a third one, even stronger, calls it gamma rays.
Alpha, beta, gamma. No, those ring a bell.
So what did these different rays tell them about what was happening, inside the atom? Told them that atoms were way more complex than anyone thought. Not those solid little balls anymore. There were processes happening inside, forces, making them change, transform.
And this is where they make another big contribution, right? The idea of half-life.
Right. They spotted a pattern, really fascinating. It always took the same amount of time for half, a radioactive sample to decay, no matter how much you started with.
So even if you had a huge chunk of radium, half of it would turn into something else after a specific time. And that same time would apply even if you only had a tiny bit to start with.
Exactly. And that time, that's what we now call the half-life of a radioactive element. They wrote this all up. Law of radioactive change. Their paper. Changed how we understood how atoms behave. Huge discovery.
So Rutherford's already shaking things up, right? He's shown that atoms aren't these permanent things. They break down, transform, give off energy. Game changer. But I have a feeling we're just getting started, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's about to do an experiment, one that will completely rewrite what we know about the atom forever.
I'm all ears. This is where the famous gold foil experiment comes in, right?
You got it. But before we jump to the gold foil, just think how radical all this was back then. We're so used to atoms and their parts, but this was totally new territory.
Imagine explaining to someone back in the 1890s, hey, everything around you, even though it seems solid, is actually mostly empty space with these tiny, constantly moving bits in the middle. They'd think you were crazy.
Totally. You needed someone like Rutherford, not just to make these discoveries, but to convince everyone else, hey, this is real.
Right. Fast forward then. Rutherford's back in England, University of Manchester, and he's about to do this experiment that's going to, rewrite the textbooks.
Yeah.
Set the scene for us. What was this gold foil experiment all about?
So picture this. Rutherford, with his buddies Hans Geiger and Ernest Marsden, they set up this experiment. Sounds simple, right? They're going to shoot a beam of these alpha particles, tiny things we know now they're basically helium nuclei, at a super thin sheet of gold foil.
Okay, shooting tiny particles at gold foil.
Mm.
Why gold, though? Seems kind of random.
Gold's special. You can hammer it into sheets so thin it's crazy, like a few atoms thick. They wanted to see how those alpha particles would interact with those gold atoms.
So they thought the alpha particles would just sail right through, like bullets through tissue paper.
Exactly. The model everyone had back then, called the plum pudding model, that's what it predicted. The atom was this, fuzzy ball of positive charge and these tiny negative electrons stuck inside.
Trying to picture that. Kind of like a blueberry muffin, right? The blueberries are the electrons.
Perfect. So if that was true, those alpha particles should have just zipped right through the gold, barely noticing it.
But that's not what happened, is it? This is where it gets really interesting.
Totally. What they saw, shocking. Most of the alpha particles did pass through like expected, but some, a small percentage, they got deflected like at crazy angles. Some even bounced straight back.
Hold on. So it's like those bullets bouncing off the tissue paper. What did that tell Rutherford?
Told him that plum pudding model. Wrong. There had to be something else inside the atom. Super small, super dense, and positively charged. Something strong enough to repel those positively charged alpha particles.
And that, everyone, is the birth of the atomic nucleus. Unbelievable. A simple experiment with gold foil completely changes how we understand the universe.
Pretty remarkable, huh? And this was just the start for Rutherford and his journey into, well, the heart of matter. His work, his discoveries, they were going to keep changing science for years to come.
What a start. Totally hooked. We'll be right back to keep exploring Rutherford's discoveries and how, get this, his work still shapes the world today.
We're back, and wow, that gold foil experiment. It's amazing how, they just shot these tiny particles at a thin sheet of gold and boom, a revolution in how we understand the atom. But Rutherford, of course, he didn't stop there. He'd found this nucleus, this tiny dense thing at the heart of the atom, and now he wanted to know, well, what's it made of?
It's like he opened a treasure chest and inside there's another one, even smaller. He knew there was more to find, more to discover. So how do you even study something that small, the nucleus? What tools did they have back then?
Well, Rutherford, he was a master at using what he had, and one of his favorite tricks was, bombarding atoms with those alpha particles, the ones we talked about earlier. Use that to pry open the secrets of the nucleus.
I'm imagining like a microscopic game of pool, shooting alpha particles at atoms and seeing what happens.
Great way to think about it. One experiment, he shoots these alpha particles at nitrogen gas, watching very carefully, and guess what? When those alpha particles hit the nitrogen atoms, something incredible happens. They knocked out these tiny particles that acted just like hydrogen nuclei.
Wait, so he's like chipping away at the nucleus, knocking out the pieces. That's wild. But how did he know those tiny particles were from the nitrogen nucleus and not just, something else hanging around?
Good question. It's all about the careful observation, what Rutherford was known for. Those particles he knocked out, they had the same mass and charge as hydrogen nuclei, the smallest, lightest nuclei they knew of back then. So he figured these must be a basic part of the nitrogen nucleus and probably other nuclei too.
So he'd found a fundamental building block of matter, the particle that would later be called the proton. I'm starting to see why he's called the father of nuclear physics.
Absolutely. The proton, a huge moment. It changed how we understood the atom, opened up a whole new field of science, nuclear physics, a massive discovery.
It's crazy, just a little over 10 years before, everyone thought atoms were these solid, unbreakable balls. Now Rutherford's knocking protons out of them. It's like going from a blurry black and white picture to full color, high def.
Perfect analogy. He was showing everyone the hidden world inside atoms, and this was just the start. But even at the proton, there was still a piece missing, wasn't there?
You're right. If the nucleus was just these positive protons, shouldn't they push each other apart? The whole thing should fly apart. Had to be something else in there, some other particle holding it all together.
You're on the right track. The mass of atomic nuclei, it just didn't add up if you only counted the protons. Rutherford, he knew something else had to be in there, and he had a pretty good idea what it might be.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Don't tell me he predicted another particle before anyone even found it.
He did. Back in 1920, he said there's got to be a neutral particle, about the same mass as a proton, but no electrical charge.
Like a kind of nuclear glue, something to hold the nucleus together, fight that push between the protons. Did he give it a name, this mystery particle?
He did, called it the neutron.
So he had this theory about the neutron, this glue holding everything together. Did people believe him? Did they find it right away?
Well, it took a while for the neutron to officially show up. 1932, 12 years after Rutherford predicted it, one of his colleagues, James Chadwick, he finally found it, did the experiments to prove it.
12 years. That's a long wait to be proven right. Must feel pretty good for Rutherford, though, right?
Huge moment in science. The neutron, along with the proton Rutherford found earlier, now we had the basic picture of the atom. Tiny, dense nucleus, protons and neutrons, and this cloud of electrons around it.
It's incredible. All three of these basic particles that make up the atom, Rutherford's right there in the middle of discovering them. But he did so much more than just find things. He influenced the whole scientific world.
That's right. He wasn't just a lone genius making discoveries. He was a leader, you know? He could inspire people, a great mentor for other scientists.
I heard he ran the Cavendish Laboratory at Cambridge. That's like the big leagues, right? What was he like as a leader?
He built a place where people could work together, you know, a place for innovation. Brilliant minds from all over came to the Cavendish to push the limits of what we knew.
And that's where Chadwick found the neutron, right? While working with Rutherford.
Exactly. And that's just one example. Lots of Nobel Prizes went to people who worked in Rutherford's labs. He created this culture, you know, excellence, pushing everyone to achieve amazing things.
Like a scientific dynasty. He wasn't just changing the world with what he found. He was shaping the minds of the next generation of scientists. But how did his work actually change the world beyond just, like, the theories of physics? We're talking about someone splitting atoms, finding particles 100 years ago. How does that connect to us now?
That's a great question. Easy to get lost in the beauty of these discoveries, but Rutherford's work, it's touched our lives in so many ways.
Well, I'm thinking nuclear power, nuclear medicine, all of that came from understanding the atom's nucleus, right?
Exactly. He laid the groundwork for those fields. His exploration of the atom, it opened up this whole new world of possibilities, manipulating atoms, harnessing that incredible energy inside them. No Rutherford, no nuclear power plants, and those plants, you know, with all their complexities, they provide a lot of the world's energy.
Pretty amazing to think about, right? Experiments done in a lab over 100 years ago, and they've had such a real impact on the world. But there's a darker side to this too, right? Nuclear weapons, all that destructive potential.
You have to acknowledge that, yeah. The same basic understanding of the atom that gave us life-saving medical tools, new energy sources, it also led to the most destructive weapons ever. It makes you think, right? Science, even the breakthroughs, can have consequences, sometimes unintended, sometimes devastating.
It really makes you think about responsibility, the ethics of science. Rutherford, he lived through World War I. He saw the horrors of war firsthand. Did he ever worry about, his discoveries being used for bad things?
He did. He knew that unlocking the secrets of the atom could have good and bad outcomes. As his work went on, he spoke more and more about the need to use this knowledge responsibly.
A lesson that's even more important today, right? As we keep pushing the boundaries of science, we have to think about the consequences. Use what we discover for good. We'll be right back to explore more about Rutherford's legacy, the impact his work still has today. We're back, wrapping up our deep dive with Ernest Rutherford. This guy, what a pioneer! Not just figuring out the atom, but really he left his mark on the whole world.
Visionary, right. He saw the potential, the good and the bad of all this nuclear stuff. And he really pushed other scientists. Think about the ethics, still relevant today. That message as we try to figure out nuclear technology, all its impact on us.
It's amazing how work done over 100 years ago with, pretty basic tools by today's standards, it's still shaping our world. Shows you how those big discoveries, they ripple out beyond the lab, even change history.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny, thinking about how Rutherford himself saw it all. He once said, anyone trying to get power from transforming atoms, well, he called it moonshine.
Thought it was impossible. But just a few years after he was gone, boom, the atomic age.
Shows you, even the most brilliant people, they can't always see the full picture, what their work will lead to. Rutherford's discovery's amazing, but really just the first step. He built the foundation, others came along, built on top of it. Led to great things, yeah, but also, those terrible weapons.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it brings us back to those ethics he talked about. We got to use this knowledge carefully, think about the good and the bad.
Couldn't agree more. And to his credit, Rutherford, he got that. He talked about it publicly. The ethics of nuclear science. He saw that science, it doesn't happen in a bubble, it shapes society, and it's on us to, steer it in the right direction.
That's a big part of his legacy, right? His work makes us have these important conversations. He wasn't just smart, he was wise, a real leader. He understood what science does to the world.
And his mentoring, don't forget that the Cavendish laboratory under him, it was a magnet for the best minds in physics.
I read somewhere it was practically a Nobel Prize factory.
True. So many Nobel Prizes to people who worked with Rutherford. He had this knack, spotting talent, then giving them what they needed to thrive, collaboration, critical thinking, pushing the limits. His legacy isn't just what he discovered, it's all the scientists he mentored, inspired.
So, as we wrap up our look at Ernest Rutherford, what are the big things we want people to remember?
First, the sheer genius of his work. He changed how we see the atom, opened up this whole new world of science.
And the impact, right? Not just in the lab, but nuclear energy, nuclear medicine, it all goes back to him. Changed our lives in both good and bad ways.
And maybe most important, Rutherford. He was all about using scientific knowledge the right way. He knew science could change the world, and he wanted us to use that power wisely, ethically.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave everyone with something to think about. What if Ernest Rutherford was alive today? What would he be working on? What mysteries would he be trying to solve? Something to ponder as we continue our own journeys of discovery, inspired by this incredible scientist.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, everyone.